Hey guys, I'm Lena and I'm back with another exciting video. I haven't posted in a while. It's been a couple months. I am so excited to be back and let's just get into the video because I feel like this one is very exciting. I will be exploring why you're struggling while learning a language and why you can't learn a language. So I've talked about this before on my channel. The lack of consistency is a big problem in your progress. So I will be exploring this in a minute, but I just wanted to say that this is very, very important. It's one of the most important mistakes that people make when they are learning a language or they're trying to. So the lack of consistency is basically not really sticking to a schedule. And by schedule, I don't mean that you have to set a time for like learning your language or whatever methods you're doing, you have to set a time and say like at 4 p.m. I'm doing this, and it is not that at all. Consistency is basically just doing something without any breaks. And taking breaks is also like a very big thing that people do, is they start learning something and then they take a break, and that break might be the reason that you can't pick it up again. It might be harder for you to come back to it the second time than when you started. So taking breaks is a big problem. So if you do like have an obstacle that you know that you're gonna take a break from language learning in the future, just start later, or try to incorporate language learning into your daily life and just try to do it on a daily basis, or at least like 4 times a week, but just try to have a certain schedule. And as I said before, not a strict schedule where you have to, set the time for everything, where you have to set like everything for the language learning process, but rather doing it without breaks and just being consistent. And you'll see that your progress will also motivate you, which leads to my second point, lack of motivation. So when you're doing something like this, language learning, you have to motivate yourself all the time, because it is such a, I want to say tedious process, because it has so many little things that you have to, pick up, so many little things that you have to learn. And it's a wonderful process, but it's also a difficult one at times. And so to motivate yourself, what I did and what worked wonders for me was honestly watching movies in that language. I remember why I picked it up in the first place. I remember why I wanted to learn it. And so I used to watch like a lot of movies. I watched YouTube videos in that language, just hearing people speak the language. I was like, okay, this language is beautiful and I want to learn it. And then not even that, just hearing it, you're like, I want to speak this language. This language seems so wonderful to speak it. I want to speak it like the natives do. And I was just so motivated, and that surge of motivation is what will drive you to later on learn it and actually pick it up again. If you're like, I'm gonna take a break, this is not for me, maybe whatever doubts you might have, they will go away once you find the one thing that will motivate you to, do it again or do it. And so as I said, like there's so many things, again, individually to each person, that will help you. And as I said, like what helped me was just watching other people, hearing other people speak the language, and it's honestly like a wonderful thing. So my next point is, I feel like it should be like something that everybody knows, and I feel like deep down they do, but then not many people really listen to it. They don't really understand that it is actually such a big part of this process, where you're like, I'm so scared. And so that is the fear of making a mistake. There's a lot of things that cause it, and you're being so fearful of doing something that should be a learning experience, learning a language. You don't, magically wake up one day and speak it or understand it or know it. It is something that comes with time. And time is a very big factor in this, because a lot of people will think that you can do this in 3 months, you can do this in 4 months. It depends on the person. It depends on who you are, what your drive is, what your motivation is. So don't be afraid to trip, because we've all tripped at least once. And when you trip, you stand up and you go on your way again. So that's the one thing that you should be doing, is going on your way again and just continuing, because the one mistake that you make, that you're scared to make, is honestly such a little thing in comparison to the grand scheme of things. And so, you know, a little grammatical mistake you might make, a little pronunciation mistake that you might make, again, that's not relevant at all. And in the grand scheme of things, as I've said before, it really does not matter. So my next point is a big one as well. I feel like each and every one of these, I've picked these especially for this video because I feel like each and every one of them have the same level of importance, and it is very high. So lack of exposure, not being exposed, very, you know, out there answer, but it is just not being exposed to the language. You're not hearing it enough. You're not being around it enough. And exposure, again, in a point I was talking about how you can watch, you know, YouTube videos to motivate yourself. You can watch, again, like movies to motivate yourself. You are exposing yourself to the language. If you just pick up a book, pick up a notebook, someone's teaching you, again, if you just focus on that one point, you're never gonna continue. You're never gonna continue on that road. You're never gonna learn it decently. So just don't focus on one single path and just try to pick it up from everything. And I've said this in one of my previous videos, which I feel like I just want to bring it up again because it's very, very important. We want to create a bubble, and within it, we want to expose ourselves to that language. So that language is our essentially bubble. Essentially what the goal is to pick up as many things as you can, hearing other people talk, watching other people speak that language, you know, even having friends that speak the language. If you can, you know, if there's a possibility, then take it with open arms. And yeah, and that's just exposing yourself. That's just being around it a lot, which leads to my next point, learning in isolation. Why you might struggle with your progress, why you might think I was here 2 weeks ago. I'm in the same place as I was 2 weeks ago, and I don't want that. I want to learn more. I want to practice more. It's just not continuing on that path. And what really, really can set you back is learning in isolation. And as I've said in my previous point, it kind of goes hand in hand with that. You just open that book and you're like, okay, this is the rule. I need to do that. And you know, you might be practicing speaking it, but then you're not doing it in the way that you should be doing it. You're opening your book, you're reading your stuff, you're practicing your speaking, then you're closing the book, and that's it. That's not how it should be. You should be always doing it. You should be always on the ready. You should always try to find some resources, some ways to, again, improve my pronunciation, some ways to improve my speech, improve my grammar, improve my everything. Because in the end, when you're finished with all of it, when you're, you know, proud in speaking it, then you're so proud of yourself, and it's honestly the most beautiful thing ever. And feeling proud of yourself is a big part of the process. It's just, you know, take your time and say, wow, I've struggled, again, I've tripped, but I've stood up and I've done it, and it's perfect. Leading from that, as I've said, you open the book, you learn it. Some people, and this happens to a lot of people, but some people, they overemphasize on grammar. Grammar is a big part of language learning. It is honestly important. It is important to know the rules of how this language works, and depending on the language, the importance also differs. But what you should know is that in every single language, it is important, because every single language has rules. You know, no matter if you like them or not, they still have rules, and you're still gonna abide by those rules. You're still gonna go by the rules. And so, again, like as I'm speaking, I'm, you know, applying rules of the language, because if not, you might not understand me. And so with that in mind, because people think that, you know, grammar is the biggest part of the language learning, in my opinion, it's actually a 50-50 on practicing and grammar. On language learning platforms where you can contact with a teacher, a speaker, there are classes that you can take that are called conversation practice, which is just essentially just conversation. So you talk to them, and you know, that basically that whole class consists of just you speaking that language. And you might think, oh, but I'm on A1, can't just start talking. It's not like so magical. But you'll see that the conversation practice is not just, them expecting you to talk from day one, right? They will help you for sure, because that is what the class is for. That's why it's called a class. It's not just like, a call with a friend. It is a class. It is a lesson. And the way it worked with me is I used to ask like words that I didn't know. So I would be replacing like my speech. Half of it used to consist of English. Like I used to just talking English, and they would be like, this is what the word means, and I would ask, and they would write it down, and everything is just a class, and you learn it and you practice it, and then you obviously have to learn grammar, but practicing is always also important. And so, as I said, like it goes 50-50 in my opinion. My next point is ineffective study methods. What I mean by that is every single person is an individual human being, and I used to, a lot of people used to tell me when I was younger that, every single person is like your 5 fingers. They're not the same, or 10 of them, I guess, they're not the same. Each of them are different. Each of them have their certain qualities, and so people are like that as well. So with that in mind, we need to understand that every single person requires a different method of learning. Some people might have photographic memory. They might, see something and they're like, okay, I understand this because I see it, and later on they know it, they remember it because they visualized it. Some people learn much better with listening. Some people have a great listening memory. Some people might remember what they spoke before, what they said before. There's some study methods that, connect with some of, a connection of hearing and seeing, and everything is very, very different. You might watch a video on YouTube, like someone explaining a topic to you, and you don't understand it because that's not your method. My sort of solution for all of this is just explore methods, and you'll find one that works for you. Nobody's gonna go and do that for you because that's your job, that's something that you should do. Obviously there's some people that might help, again, teachers, and that might guide you, but you're the only one who can go around, search for methods, and find one that works wonders for you and works better for you, works best for you, and then you'll see how much you progress because you found the one thing that helps you. And in the end, if you were learning by a different learning method that didn't work for you, you'll be like, oh, this works for me now. I understand it now. Like I actually understand it because I was learning it in a different way. I was learning it in a way that didn't help me at all. It can even set you back because you don't get it, and then you have to continue. You don't know the previous topic and you're still continuing, and it's all like a little, a soup that just that's not homogeneous. So you have to find a type of method, a way to learn that is perfect for you, that fits you. It's like a shoe. If you get a shoe that's like 2 sizes too big, you're not gonna be comfortable when you walk, right? 2 sizes too small, still not gonna be comfortable. But the perfect shoe has gotta fit you. And so that's what it is. You gotta find the right method that will, again, fit you. The next point I will be talking about is something that I guess applies to like a certain group of people. So the people who don't utilize technology. So not utilizing technology is my next point. Some people think that traditional language learning is the way. It is the way. You gotta open a book, those books from the 1900s, and that's how you learn. Or even modern books, again, you open them and that's how you learn. You have to write, you have to do all the traditional stuff. But there's nothing stopping you from doing 2 things at once or 3 things at once. The world has evolved. The technology has evolved. Technology is now a big part of our lives, right? You can, again, do your traditional things, which is also very, very helpful. That's why it's worked for years and years and years. But something that's, been around for, a while now, but it is quite new, is technology. It's language learning apps. I've talked about this. I have a video on language learning apps, so if you want to choose the right one for you, I do have one where I'm exploring a lot of language learning apps. But it can be language learning apps, it can be the apps, it can be YouTube videos, it can be websites, it can be, again, movies, and it's all tied down to practical skills. So they will help you improve your practical skills as well. So if you want to go with the traditional path, keep in mind that if you add a little bit of an app, a website, a video to that, consistent practice, then your progress will be evident in a shorter amount of time. And, not just talking about the speed of the learning, but also how effective it is. It is so effective, and it will be easier for you. And we're all trying to find, obviously, an easier way to learn, an easier way to live, work smarter, not harder. And, just all of the stuff that you do, you gotta find an easier way to do it, because then, you might have more time to practice it and speak it and maybe do some other things. And so just keep in mind that doing multiple things at once is a great way, and it's also not just going straight, but also, veering right and veering left, and, all of the different paths that you can take. And the last point that I will be talking about today is impatience. So we see a lot of people on a daily basis. We see people speaking the language we want to speak. We see people, being so good at what they do, right? And so when we pick it up first, we're like, okay, I'm gonna do it. You start doing it and you're like, oh no, this takes time. And so again, like, time is such a big factor in all of the stuff that I talk about. And time is such a big factor in language learning. It's a huge factor. Not even comparing to other people, but when we see ourselves, we say, oh no, I'm taking too long of a time. But remember, again, we're all different. We all take different times to do something. And honestly, if you try to run, if you try to be too fast, you can forget some things. That's one. You can skip things. That's two. And, when you're going on a path, you want to be here because you're trying to go from point A to point B, not continuing on that path until you have mastered each single point that you have to go through is a big, big thing. So don't try to, pass by and then just be there in a second. Oh, I succeeded. But then you can't speak it. You don't know anything because you didn't chew it enough, So it's essentially biting off more than you can chew, but it's also rushing, and rushing is never the answer. So just, again, like as I said, I always like to, add figurative examples, but chew first and then go, and then in the end, the outcome will be, better when you do something slowly, when you do something in depth. It doesn't have to be too slow. You don't have to sit in one point, in one place, a lot, months for months. I'm learning this one thing until I'm perfect in this. No, that's not the way to go. It's the perfect balance of going the right speed and being effective. And so in the end, the outcome, as I said before, it's gonna be amazing. So that's my little advice on that. Okay, so those were all the points that I wanted to talk about today, and I really hope it helped. I am sincerely hoping that you'll apply these to your life, to your progress, to your process of language learning and, learning and growing with it. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure that I will be posting more, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!